The Republican Party hates women. Yes, it's true, and we shouldn't be surprised. Hi, my name is Suri Crowe, and you are watching the MeidasTouch Network. If we are going by watch what they do, and specifically watch how they legislate when it comes to women's rights and freedoms, it is they, the Republicans themselves, who are dictating to us what the future in America, the Gilead, will be. This next clip is from legal writer and lawyer Elie Mystal. He explains it in a way that I found very sobering, what the core agenda of the Republican Party truly is.
This is why Republicans have worked so hard to take over the courts. And on this particular point, it's not just Trump. The thing, and I've talked about this before, but the thing that links a Reagan judge to a Bush judge to a Bush W judge to a Trump judge, the thing that they all share in common is a hatred for voting rights. That's how they are picked. That's what they are vetted for. The questions that they ask Republican judges are basically, do you hate women and do you hate voting rights? And if you hate both of them, you get to have a judgeship, and you get to have a judgeship, and you get to have a judgeship.
In the nearly 2 years since Roe was overturned by the right-wing majority on the Supreme Court, we have seen women's reproductive rights and bodily autonomy vanish in state after state, with more on the way if Republicans get their wishes. The Alabama Supreme Court, under the leadership of white Christian nationalist and Chief Justice Tom Parker, ruled frozen embryos as having the same rights as children, and have thrown the state into a legal frenzy as IVF clinics there have shut down in fear of the legal repercussions that may arise if any of the frozen embryos were damaged. To be clear, the Alabama Supreme Court did not actually ban IVF, but by ruling that frozen embryos have the same rights as breathing children, they have just made it far more difficult for families to access IVF treatment and much more expensive, because those frozen embryos would now have to be stored in perpetuity instead of destroyed or discarded once a family made the choice they no longer had need of them. For example, if there's a family or a woman who's got, her 2 or 3 kids from IVF, she has these extra frozen embryos. Typically the case is that the clinic would dispose of them in a medically appropriate way. But under this new Alabama law, ostensibly discarded embryos could lead to wrongful death or even homicide charges. Right. And this all goes back to the reversal of Roe. That was the linchpin case that made all of this possible.
That Alabama Supreme Court is all Republicans. We're now in 2024, decision 2024. Danielle, is IVF the next one-issue vote coming up in November?
It's going to be IVF, Katie, and it's also going to be birth control. They are not stopping, right? Republicans are showing us exactly what after Roe v. Wade America they want, right? And when you listen to that judge's ruling in Alabama, when he is talking and invoking biblical scripture and God and all of these things, what happened to the separation between church and state? Right? What happened to our ability to function inside of a democracy? They want a theocracy. They want white Christian nationalist rule. And so I don't care if Republicans today want to say, oh, IVF went too far, because what they are doing is just playing hide and go seek with who they really are for the voters. Right? We have seen every time that abortion, that reproductive health care is put on the ballot, they lose. And so people have to understand that what they are doing in Alabama, what they are doing in Texas and across these red states, they will nationalize if it is Donald Trump or if it's Nikki Haley who becomes the next president.
I raised the same red flags in a TikTok I made last summer.
You know that women and children are already suffering the grave consequences of this radical extremist decision and agenda by the Republican Party. There are women who have bled out in emergency rooms or hospital parking lots as doctors weigh out the legalities of whether they can do what their Hippocratic oath calls them to do no harm, provide life-saving care. But because of this extremism within the Republican Party, women no longer are able to call the shots between themselves and their doctors for what is best for them and their family. Women who are dealing with all kinds of health complications, non-viable pregnancies. And we know that this is happening. These bans are happening at the state level, which is why it is so incredibly important for you to vote at your local elections. Republican legislatures are the ones who are making these abortion bans possible. And make no mistake about it, that every Republican who is running is going to be in lockstep with a national abortion ban. Do not let them fool you. Do not let them Nikki Haley you. Reproductive health and women's rights to our own bodies is on the ballot in every single election from here on out. You better vote like it is.
Oh, and what about the protected constitutional guarantee of separation of church and state?
How is this not disqualifying, Mark, for a judge to be able to be promoting this type of philosophy and then infusing it directly into an opinion that is filed in a court?
Yeah, I think the question really is, how could this opinion possibly withstand constitutional muster under the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment, which guarantees the separation of church and state? And here again, we have to look to SCOTUS. We have to look to the United States Supreme Court, which in a series of decisions, especially in 2022's Kennedy versus Bremerton, absolutely eviscerated what remained of the separation of church and state, took away these key protections against the infusion of religion and government, and essentially freed judges like Chief Justice Parker to implement their own extremist evangelical ideology as part of state law. The Supreme Court took away all of the remaining safeguards that shielded us as a pluralistic society, as citizens of many different religions, from the state imposing one specific religious belief on all of us. So again, Chief Justice Parker appears to be a real kook. Affiliations with QAnon, his decision is outrageous, but it just doesn't happen, and it doesn't have legal force if the United States Supreme Court hadn't given him free rein to do this.
Trump is now trying to distance himself from the Alabama decision in statements like this one, where he says the Republican Party should always be on the side of the miracle of life and the side of mothers, fathers, and their beautiful babies. IVF is an important part of that, and our great Republican Party will always be with you in your quest for the ultimate joy in life. Okay, well, he's lying. And Vice President Kamala Harris was quick to call Trump out on his utter hypocrisy.
Donald Trump says that he wants to protect IVF. Don't get distracted from the facts. He literally is the architect of this entire crisis. What happened in Alabama is a direct result of what happened in the United States Supreme Court. He handpicked 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the full intention for them to overturn Roe v. Wade and take away the protections around every person's freedom and right to be able to make decisions about their own body and not have their government tell them what to do.
Oh, and here's Trump himself bragging about his judicial appointments while he was campaigning in South Carolina just last week.
Appointed over 300 federal judges, a record, and 3 great Supreme Court justices.
The litmus test for the danger that white Christian nationalists present to this country could not be made more clear than in this clip that's now gone viral with Alabama Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville.
A reaction to the Alabama Supreme Court ruling on the fact that embryos are children?
Yeah, I was all for it. We need to have more kids. We need to have an opportunity to do that. And I thought this was the right thing to do. But
IVF is used to have more children, and right now IVF services are paused at some of the clinics in Alabama. Aren't you concerned that this could impact people who are trying to have kids?
Well, that's for another conversation.
Senator, what do you say to the women right now in Alabama who no longer have access to IVF, or who will not, as a result of this ruling? What do you say to them?
Well, that's a hard one. It really is. It's really hard. Because, again, you want people to have that opportunity.
Tuberville clearly does not have a clue what IVF is or how it works. But he has been elected to the United States Senate. He is a man with great power to make or stop laws from passing that would protect women and children. Here's what my senator, Virginia Senator Tim Kaine, had to say about this war on women's rights. He put this statement out. Alabama Republicans want to ban IVF. Oklahoma Republicans want to ban the morning after pill and certain IUDs. Republicans were never going to stop at banning abortion. This was always about controlling women's reproductive health care choices. We can't let them succeed. The thing that makes me sick, honestly, is the abject hypocrisy of the Republican Party. They pretend to care about family values and be so pro-life, but in instance after instance, they prove how cruel they truly are. Jess Piper gets it. She tweeted this out. They will call an embryo a child and protect it, but turn away federal dollars meant to feed hungry kids. They will ban abortion and kick kids off Medicaid. They will force children to bear children, but defund schools and roll back child labor laws. Not pro-life, but forced birth. And everything she said in that tweet or X or whatever you want to call it is absolutely true. Republicans are rolling back child labor laws so that children can work in dangerous situations at younger and younger ages. Everything she said is true. So again, watch what they do and not what they pretend. And it has nothing to do with protecting children and everything to do with protecting white male power. And that is why they vote that way. So do not be fooled. Right now, Speaker Moses, as I like to call him, MAGA Mike Johnson, is supporting a bill that would make the Alabama ruling nationalized. Missouri Republicans blocked Democrats from adding a rape and incest exception to that state's abortion ban. Republican state lawmaker Rick Bratton calling a girl's or woman's rape-related pregnancy, quote, that by God's grace may even be the greatest healing agent you need to recover from such an atrocity. Republicans have moved to completely defund Planned Parenthood in that state, even though none of the clinics in Missouri currently provide abortion health care. But what they do provide is reproductive health care to poor and minority communities. So once again, we see white Republican men stomping all over the rights of everybody else. Tennessee Republicans continue to prove how hateful and cruel towards children they are. State Representative and Democrat Gloria Johnson introduced a bill in Tennessee that would allow for an abortion exception for children under 13 because there are zero exceptions for rape and incest in Tennessee law. Representative Johnson's tweet after the vote took place said, quote, I asked for a roll call vote and every Republican voted against allowing 12-year-olds and under to have an abortion. In other words, they voted to force 12 and under carry their rapist baby. And it's not an accident. The Republican Party does want a national abortion ban. They absolutely do. They want to strip women and little girls of all of our rights. I mean, they've already stomped on voting rights for minority communities for years, and they would like to remove the right for women to have a voice in our disappearing democracy as well. They believe women should be submissive incubators and child carers. And their dear leader is telling us this out loud.
There are people in this country who see Donald Trump for who he is. He is a racist. He is a bigot. He is telling you all of the quiet parts out loud so you don't have to pretend or really figure or wonder, I wonder what he's thinking. I wonder what he will do when he becomes president. He's telling you he will be a dictator. He's telling you women can't have bodily autonomy. He's telling you he doesn't want people to vote. Pay attention. Right? Like all of the things that he is saying, he means and he will do.
I think that's what, shocks me is that there are still millions of people who are checked out and don't realize how serious and dangerous the Republican Party is. Have we not seen Republican after Republican fall in line behind Trump? Remember when Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham said that Trump was the biggest danger to ever present to America and Trump was insulting Ted Cruz's wife? Well, they are all now faithfully in the cult of Trump. And Nikki Haley couldn't even admit that America was built on a foundation of racism. And she is a woman of color. Don't think she's going to change her tune if she were to get into the White House. She is going to follow in line with the Federalist Society, with the Leonard Leos, the billions of dollars that are being funneled to the Supreme Court so that white Christian nationalist theocracy can take place. She's never going to be able to stand up to that, so don't expect her to. The Republican Party, as we knew it, is gone. It's over. People don't seem to realize that the target is on their back too, like these Republican women. It's not just brown and black people now. All these white conservative Christian moms in Nashville who, after that horrible Covenant school shooting, couldn't believe that their Republican lawmakers would not listen to them and pass legislation that would protect their children from the epidemic of gun violence. And I think of the many white Christian mommy bloggers writing about their IVF-built families who have been voting for Republicans all along, thinking that they would be safe. I don't know, because of their white privilege, but now their rights are at risk too. You're not special, white women. They are coming for you. They're already doing it. Look at what is happening in Alabama, Tennessee, Missouri, Texas, Florida, state after state. Republican men, white Christian nationalists, do not care about women's rights or anybody else's but their own. Wake the up. My name is Suri Crowe, and you are watching the MeidasTouch Network, where we collectively gather under an umbrella of a pro-democracy movement and facts. So thank you for watching. Please share, like, and comment. That bumps the algorithm to get more of this content out to people who really need to hear it. People who really need to understand that their rights are under fire too. And this is why we must stick together in this future. My watch just beeped. Anyway, thanks for joining me today. I hope to see you back here very soon. Peace.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.